What's a time you were glad you actually read the paperwork before signing it? When I decided to propose to my girlfriend, I bought a ring from a well-known jewelry store. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I also knew she might want a different ring. So, I asked the staff if I could return it if needed. They assured me I could. After proposing, my fiancée found another ring she preferred at a different store. I went back to return the original ring. The employee handed me a small form to sign. As I was about to sign, I noticed fine print stating, "I acknowledge that this purchase is final and non-refundable." I questioned why I needed to sign that. She took the form back and called the manager, who refunded the full amount to my card without any issues. For those curious, this happened at People's Jewelers in Vancouver. I'm a musician. Once, a label offered me a contract written in very broken English. The entire document was absurd, but these clauses stood out. I had to give them the rights to my name. They would own the copyrights to all my previous songs. If they couldn't sell all physical copies of my music, I'd have to cover the losses out of pocket. No thanks. Edit. Since people are asking, here's my Bandcamp link. I make industrial music. Some of it's pretty noisy, so be prepared. My husband and I were buying a house. He signed the papers immediately, but I had other errands and arrived later. I started reviewing the loan application and the lender said, "You know, it's not necessary to read all that, especially since your husband already signed." I insisted on reading it and discovered we were borrowing $250,000 at a 25% interest rate. I refused to sign and left immediately. The lender threatened legal action, but I told him it'd be cheaper to go to court than pay his outrageous interest. Since then, I handle all our mortgage dealings. By the way, the lender was my husband's high school friend. I once applied for a job where the contract stated I'd have to work there for at least 4 years. If I left earlier, those years would be considered training and I'd have to reimburse the company for them. Some time ago, our school introduced Wi-Fi. When I first tried to connect, I noticed the agreement stated the school could confiscate my phone and examine its contents. I decided not to use it and still don't to this day. I decided to buy a phone with a plan for $200. The seller mentioned they were closing soon and suggested I come back the next day to sign the papers. By morning, the contract, left overnight on the table, miraculously changed from $200 to $300. I caught them and went to another store. My wife and I went to a dealership to finance our first car. They had a special offer for recent graduates. 0 interest. The finance guy offered 2 loan options, 3 years and 5 years. He assured us both were interest-free, so we chose 5 years for lower payments. When we reviewed the paperwork, we found the 5-year loan had a 6.5% interest rate. We confronted them, and they offered a discount on the car. Makes you wonder how many graduates fall for this without reading the fine print. My landlord allowed me to move out a month early because he had a new tenant lined up. He brought a form for me to sign, altering the original lease. I decided to read it thoroughly, knowing he had a history of fraud. Good thing I did. The form stated that if anything went wrong with the new tenant, I'd still be responsible for rent, even though I no longer lived there. When I pointed this out, he said, "Oh, I added that to protect myself." Later, he stole my deposit. I should probably sue him. I hate you, John. We were selling our business. My wife's car was registered under the company, but we weren't selling it. When the lawyer sent over the contract, it included the car. Thankfully, we read everything carefully and removed that clause before the buyer saw it. I found a job 350 miles from home. The offer was great, and I even found an apartment nearby. The day before signing, I reviewed the contract and found 3 issues. The position was the only one I'd ever hold at the company. No promotions. No health insurance provided. If I left or was fired, I couldn't work for any company with computers or internet for a year. I was applying for a tech support analyst role. Despite the good salary, I declined. Comment: that third clause would never hold up in court. Reply: they're just trying to scare people who don't know better. Advice: if your employment contract has such restrictive clauses, they often aren't legally enforceable unless they involve industry secrets that could give competitors an unfair advantage. Even then, it's up to the courts to decide. At my last restaurant job, we received new employment terms. I noticed a non-compete clause, preventing us from working in the same industry after leaving. I informed my colleagues, and most refused to sign. A week later, management had to revise the contract. Comment: a non-compete clause in a restaurant? What secrets are they hiding? Reply: it's to prevent employees from leaving. If they can't work elsewhere, they'll stay longer. Advice: non-compete clauses are only enforceable when they involve industry secrets that could give competitors an unfair advantage. Even then, courts must determine their validity. I signed up for a gym membership advertised at $90 a month. Instead, they charged my card $250. Frustrated, I went home. The next day, I couldn't sleep, still angry. I called to cancel, but they said I could only do so if I moved to an area without their gyms. A day later, I read the contract and found a clause allowing cancellation within 2 weeks without any reason. It had only been 3 days. I quickly canceled. Question: did you get your money back? Answer: yup, every penny. I went to pick up my car from the dealership. They handed me papers to sign. As I read them, I found a clause allowing them to share my personal information with third parties. No way! Question: what dealings did you have with them? Answer: it was my first time bringing the car in for repairs. They fixed it but wouldn't return it without my signature. When I pointed out that clause, they deleted my data from their system, and I took my keys and left. Advice: a mechanic or dealer can only withhold your car if you haven't paid for services. If the bill is settled, they can't keep your vehicle. Otherwise, it's considered theft, and you can call the police. I was looking for a new room and found an apartment I liked. Ready to pay the deposit, I decided to review the house rules sent via email. While touring, they gave me printed rules that seemed strict but manageable. Thankfully, I read the emailed rules. They were drastically different. Guests required a written request a week in advance, approved by all residents. Guests allowed only until 10 p.m. No overnight guests. Guests had to pay $20 to cover toilet water usage. I thought, you expect me to pay over $1,000 for a room and can't have friends over without hassle? I backed out immediately. There were other ridiculous rules, but these stood out. Comment: $20. That's some expensive toilet water. Reply: if I had to pay that, I'd flush the toilet non-stop. I was about to freelance for a media company. As a recent graduate with 2 years of experience, they sent me a contract stating pay was $6.50 an hour. Expected to work 37.5 hours week. Use my own car for work, with no reimbursement for wear or fuel. Transfer all rights to any creative work produced 2 years before starting the job. I declined. My wife and I were days away from signing a mortgage. The final contract showed a slight interest rate increase of 0.2%. When we inquired, they claimed it was due to a credit check. Feeling uneasy, we decided not to sign. A week later, our company was acquired and relocated us to another state. Had we signed, we would have been stuck with a house we couldn't keep. Thanks for watching. Share your own stories about times you were glad you read the documents before signing. And don't forget to check out our other fresh and exciting episodes. Goodbye.